Welcome back to Cards and Comics. Today, I'm going to be discussing highest sales on eBay for March and April for inserts from the 90s and parallels as well. So I've done this for a few months. So I did January, February. I missed March. I was traveling to 2 different countries, or actually I went to like 4 countries. But anyway, I was out of the country for quite a bit. So I wanted to combine the 2 months into one, give an update, and go right into it right now. So we'll start with this honorable mention, which was a card that surprised me. Now, since I'm combining 2 months into one, the sales are much higher than in previous months because it's basically twice as much data. So the average sale price of the cards here are higher than the previous videos. So this card did shake me a little bit because I did not expect an Adrian Beltre card to be selling for $8,500. It's an international refractor, obviously from the first year Bowman Chrome was issued, 97. It's a beautiful card. It's one of my favorite sets ever. It was really when I got really into Bowman products, was this product right here. And it's sold on April 13th. And it's a pop count of 8. And I was also shocked when I went back into VCP history and saw that the last 10 sold in 2019. So pre-pricing craziness in a lot of respects, for $2,300. And then in 2021, a PSA 9, so not even a 10, sold for $3,500. So this card has a history of sales that are pretty high. So this is a card that I would never have thought to sell in the multiple thousands and almost $10,000 as a 10. So, it's just one of those cards that you might see raw at a show, or you might see raw on eBay, and it's worth maybe a flyer to buy it and grade it, because even as a 9, it sells pretty well. So this was a kind of card that really shocked me. It didn't land in the top 10 because there's so many gosh darn Griffey cards selling so expensive that it didn't make it, but I wanted to talk about it. So starting at number 10, this is one of the aforementioned Ken Griffey Jr. cards. This is a PSA 10 96 Topps Chrome Refractor. This card is interesting. It's only a pop count of 11, which is low. That is a pretty tough card to get in the 90s. This card also suffers from greening like a lot of refractors and chrome cards do. So it's one of those cards that can turn green. It's the highest sale of this card ever, according to the VCP database, and that's where I'm gathering the data. They do not pay me. If someone wants to give them a shout out and tell them to come pay me for using them so much and giving them so much credit in my videos, I would love that, but I do not have any sponsors, so there you go. Previously, this card sold in 2020 for $3,250. That was a previous high in 2020. So you can see that card has gone up $5,000 in 3 years, or 2.5 years, let's say. So this is just what I want to stop and say, this mantra that, cards are going down, or that in general cards are suffering. It's not all cards. It's like I said, it's specific cards are going up, specific cards are going down. So this is a good example of a card that has gone up dramatically in 2 years, or 2.5 years. And then the thing that was really funny was there was a sale of this card in 2017 for $100. And it's a real sale. I looked it up, and prior to that, there was even a sale for $77. So it's interesting how much this card has gone up in 6 years. It is quite remarkable. So for people who, again, want to talk about how the collectible market is tanking, this is a great card to show as an example of something that is definitely not tanking, especially in a 6-year gap. You're talking like a growth of quite a bit. So next up is number 9. Is our old friend, the 94 Upper Deck Dual Auto Mickey Mantle Ken Griffey Jr. So I'm not going to talk too much about this card. I've talked about it quite a bit in my other videos in terms of rarity and issues with the autograph. The aftermarket autographs that this card can have. So this appears to be a legit Griffey auto based on my knowledge of the auto and placement, color, all that. So looks like a legit autograph. I don't agree with the 10 autograph grade. You can see in the K of the Griffey, there is some fading. And there's some fading in the J, or sorry, in the Y's. So I just feel like this is not a 10 auto for one thing. But the card sold for almost $10,000. But the biggest issue here, and the theme of this video should be, shenanigans are still happening in the card market, especially on eBay. This card was sold on March 12th for $12,600 and never paid for because it obviously resold on April 9th and at a negative loss of $3,100. So was the first, obviously it wasn't paid for and it was resold. That always begs the question, was this a shill job? And then you have the 1990 no name on front, Frank Thomas BGS 8. Again, this was sold by the same seller who sold the previous Griffey Manual Auto. And just like it sold previously on March 12th for virtually the same amount of money as it sold for this time around. And this is one of those cards that, we see selling very highly, every month it appears on eBay. Now, two cards from the same seller that sold in March and then resold again in April, to me shows a little bit of smoke in that idea that maybe there was a shiller, or maybe it's a consignment company. I don't know much about the seller, but it just seems a little suspicious, and I don't think it's something that I would, I would definitely pay attention to from this person's auctions. But I don't know for sure, but it definitely is odd that two cards on this list from the same seller were sold two different times. That seemed a little suspect. Next up is a 1999 Metal Universe Precious Metal Gems Derek Jeter in a PSA 5. The PSA 5 grade is very important for some information I'm going to give you in a minute. But it sold for $11,500. 56 bids, stamped 16 out of 50. Last sale was on, October 2022 for $9,000 and a BVG 7.5. So it's interesting that this card, basically in, again, 6 months, 7 months, has sold for, let's say, $1,500 more than as a PSA 5 than the last BVG 7.5. And I did not make a mistake. It is not a BGS. It is a BVG 7.5. Very interesting that it's a BVG. Now, the highest sell for this card, by the way, was for a PSA 10, sold on 315 by Tonka Bear 23 bronze, and it was for I believe it was $20,000. This card sold back in 2019. However, Tonka Bear 23 bronze is on the blowout list of known trimmers, and there it is at the bottom. Tonka Bear 23 bronze is on the list of trimmers with such royalty in the hobby as Kevin Berge, Gary Moser, Will Jamette, and on and on. So that PSA 10 is sus. I've looked at it. You can look at it in the VCP or whatever database you want to look at, and look at that top edge and let you tell me what you think. All right, next up, number 6. Circa Thunder Super Rave Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 10, bringing $15,655. Sold on March 26th on auction. Majority of these sales are auction, and that's very interesting. That the auction sales on eBay are bringing, in some cases, record prices. This is an interesting card, numbered 6 of 25. The same card did sell in auction, in a golden auction in February 1st, 2021 for $20,900. So this seller sold lost a little over $5,000 in, roughly a little over 2 years. So that's again, the contrast. I said some cards are going up, some cards are going down. This is an interesting thought I have on this card, is that it was sold, and if you've seen my video about how eBay protected me, by, returning a card that failed inspection from PSA. It was from the same seller that sold this card. And this seller sold a lot of high-end Griffies all at the same time. And no matter how you do that, you are going to spread money out amongst even the whaliest of whales to some point. And I think if this card was to be sold, let's say when there's no other super high-end Griffies on eBay, it may have brought more. That's just my thought. It did sell for less, so there's that. But it definitely was one of those cards that probably could have brought more if it wasn't being, if it wasn't didn't have so much competition at the same time. Now these are 1 in 216 packs, so they're not overly impossible to get. So Circa Thunder boxes are kind of fun to open. So I encourage anyone, if you can find a box or two, open it up and see if you can get a Super Rave. They're awesome. Next up, number 5, is the 1997 Flair Showcase Legacy Row Zero Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 10. So again, by auction on April 24th. These are numbered out of 100, so this is card number 85 out of 100, and it is the highest sale for this card in any grade. Previous PSA 10 sale was for $10,500 in 2020, back when the market was nutsoid. Now this card is interesting for a lot of reasons. One is all legacy parallels like row 0, 1, 2, all the rows have the same odds. So because they're all numbered out the same. So there's no difference in rarity between the rows on the legacies, while the regular showcase, showpiece, showtime, row 0, 1, 2, 3, like those are all have different levels of rarity, but the legacies don't. So just so people who think the row 0 legacy is rarer or harder to get than the row 1, it's not. It's just people like the design better. That is sort of why it's sometimes worth more. Nice looking card. I just got my first legacy in the mail. It's on my Instagram. I'm going to be doing a video about that card pretty soon. But I just got my first Flair Showcase Legacy, and they are very, very nice cards. Next up, number 4, Skybox Premium Star Rubies Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 7. Sold March 1st, again by auction. $17,666. That's a good number there. Highest record sale for a PSA 7. Highest recorded sale for any card, for this card of any type, was a PSA 8 that sold in 2022 for $22,000. So I think a 7 selling, less than a year later for $5,000 cheaper, but it was a 7 versus an 8, isn't that bad. I think that this is a very reasonable sell. I wouldn't call this a loss of value. I call this pretty much in line with what I think the card would have been worth. If you take the PSA 8 and say what would you estimate a 7 would bring, I'd say between $15,000 and $18,000, and that's exactly what it brought. So to me, I think it's a very reasonable sell. Card is very strong. There's only 50 of these cards out there, so there's only so many to go around, and I do like how they look, and they're from a product that is very expensive to open, and you don't see a lot of these boxes for sale. So this is a product that you don't see very often. Next up is, again, one of our old friends, the 93 Finest Refractor Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 10. Again, this is a card that we see quite often in this list because it's one of the alpha and omega cards of the 90s. It's sold on April 24th by auction again, $18,322, massive sale. Now, it's not the most massive, though, because 10 sold just earlier this year for $20,000. So again, this card did lose a little bit of value even this year. So this card did go down a little bit in terms of just from prior sale. Now, the highest recorded sale was in 2022 for $26,400 by PWCC. Pop count is 42. So that's an interesting pop count. It's a lot higher than a lot of cards on this list. It just shows that there's a huge demand for this card. So the prices are remaining pretty high, but enough of them are out there that this card can sell, let's say 3 or 4 times in a quarter, and then obviously once a whale gets the card, there's less whales for the card. It might go down in value. That sometimes happens. I would not say this card has any less demand just because it sold for a little bit less this time around. But it does show that cards with a little bit higher pop counts can fluctuate in value because there's more of them to go around than something that is numbered very low, like that Super Rave out of 25. Next up, Ken Griffey Jr. Again, very Ken Griffey Jr. heavy, I believe. Majority of the cards, I think 7 out of 10 on this list, are Ken Griffey Jr. The Upper Deck Century Legends Epic Signatures Gold Ken Griffey Jr. numbered out of 100. Sold on March 20th. It is a PSA 10. Again, from the same collection that was, that sold the majority of the cards on this list. And again, the same guy who sold me the Centurion Refractor that was returned. This card graded a 10. There's no auto grade on this card. However, it is a strong auto. I would not argue that this is a 10 auto. This looks like a very strong auto. The most recent sale was for $7,500 over a year ago. But it was a PSA 9 for $7,500. It's the highest recorded sale of this card on VCP. I think 18.6 is a strong sale for this card. I think that if 2 or 3 more come up, they might go lower just because this, I think, is very top end for this card. Because again, it's 100. It's an autograph. It's a card that people really love. But to me, I think it's not a card that would bring $25,000 or $35,000 in the very near future. Again, 100 isn't the uber rare cards that you see out there are closer to the 25 and 50. So I think there's enough of this to go around for that uber high-end collector that it won't hit, let's say 40, I said $20,000 to $40,000 anytime soon. And so I feel like this is a really good sale, and it may not be broken for a while. In fact, if it sells again in the next 2 months, it could even bring lower, but we'll see. Now, last but not least is a card, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit, is the SP Authentic 1999 Ken Griffey Jr. Chirography Gold PSA 10. So this is both the auto and the card grade. The prior card did not have both the auto and the card. It was just a card. So it's interesting the seller had these cards graded in different ways. I do know that he's buying cards on auction and doing it, like everyone else. So he's not grading all these cards himself. So that is why you see some difference in how they're graded. Obviously a 1010 is the best you can hope for. Really strong price, $22,000. The last time this card sold for was $14,000 on 3/18. So just a little over a couple of days after one sold, this one brought even more. So this is a very interesting, thought is that, pretty much, around the same time period, you had one bring 14 and one bring 22. So it's a big sale. It's a big number. Again, this card, just so you know, though, if you're going to open boxes, this card wasn't redemption. So you're not going to get this card live. Obviously, you're not going to get a redemption either. So I would not bust this product if you're looking for the actual card. Again, it's the highest sale of this card. Now, during my research, I found something very interesting, that there's 2 distinct versions of this card. So when I looked at the recent sales of the last card sold, which was a BGS 910, which explains why it sold for $14,000. It was a BGS 910, not a 1010 PSA. So that explains that mystery. But you can see the cards are different, and they're kind of strikingly different. So the 2 things that are very different about it are, look at where the bat is in card 1 versus card 2. There's a clear gap between the bat and the top of the card in card 1. Card 2, it's, the bat's pretty much at the very top and almost cut off. And then at the bottom, you can see that space where the hand numbering is. You can see that there is a bigger box for the hand numbering. So when I saw this, I thought, man, that's weird. That's a weird one. I just can't imagine. There's only 24 of these cards printed. Why is there 2 different versions? So I thought maybe, okay, well, is one trimmed? Is one fake? And then I looked in the VCP catalog and I found another one. And I'm like, oh, well, look at that one. that one matches the other BGS card. So maybe that PSA card isn't real. Now look at the serial numbers. This is the 10 and the 9 is right there. So were they all serial numbered together, like in order, cut and numbered next to each other? That's, but you can obviously see cards 2 and 3 aren't the same as card number 1. So I'm thinking, there's something wrong here. This card could be altered and trimmed. So I'm thinking like, hey, this is something wrong. But then I found another photo and it matches the first photo. And it's card 27. Or sorry, 21. Not 27, 21. 24. So now we've got the big mystery here. So 2 cards have a small box and the bat is basically a 1/4 inch below the border. 2 cards where you got a big box and the bat's basically cut off. Why out of 24 cards is there 2 versions of this card that are so different in terms of how they're cut, how they're cropped, how they're made? It just makes no sense. So this is just an interesting mystery. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I don't think that there was fakes made. I think this is maybe just an anomaly that is out there for no reason. Maybe Upper Deck would have some idea of why this occurred. But it definitely looks like there was either 2 different print runs of this card made, or that they just had, some odd printing issues or cutting issues when this card was made. I don't know. It's very odd. I would love to measure these cards to see if they measure all the same. Maybe, they're cut differently. I don't know. I can't tell. But this is an interesting thing. So that is my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you think. What cards, were you hoping to see on this list, or cards that you're interested in? Or is there sales out there I may have missed? Inform me. I love to be proven wrong or be told there's other things out there to look at, because I love looking at 90s cards. It's always fun for me to do. And I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.